Emma was the kind of person who never gave up, no matter how tough life got. After losing her job in the bustling streets of London, she found herself staring at a pile of bills and dwindling options. Her heart sank every time she opened her laptop to find rejection emails, each one a reminder of how the world seemed to move forward without her. Then one chilly evening, as the rain drizzled against her window, she spotted a job posting that seemed almost too good to be true. Live-in nanny needed, Dubai, generous salary, full accommodation provided. Dubai, it felt like another world, a dream too distant for someone barely making it by. But something in Emma told her to take the chance. What did she have to lose? Little did she know this single decision would not only change her life, but lead her to a story no one would believe, a story that would begin in survival and end in love beyond her wildest imagination. Emma had never seen anything like this in her life. As her plane descended into Dubai, the city sparkled like 1,000,000 diamonds scattered across a desert oasis. She pressed her nose against the tiny airplane window, staring at the towering skyscrapers that seemed to compete with the stars above. "I guess this isn't Kansas anymore," she thought with a smirk, clutching the small, battered suitcase that held her life's possessions. At the airport, the heat greeted her like an overly enthusiastic host, a suffocating warmth she wasn't quite ready for. And then came the chauffeur. Yes, you heard that right. A uniformed man holding a sign that read, "Miss Emma Clark," stood near a sleek black car that screamed luxury. Was this for real? Her mind raced. Did I step into the wrong life? Is there another Emma Clark who actually deserves this VIP treatment? But she wasn't going to argue. Sliding into the leather seats, she tried her best not to let out an audible gasp as the car zipped effortlessly through the bustling streets. She didn't even know cars could feel this smooth. Oh, and let's not forget the driver, Ali, who casually offered her a chilled bottle of sparkling water, complete with a lemon slice. For a moment, Emma wondered if they had mistaken her for some royal family member. Or worse, maybe she was heading straight into a crazy setup for one of those true crime documentaries she used to binge-watch late at night. As they pulled into the driveway, Emma felt her jaw go slack. The house was more like a palace. No, scratch that. It was a palace. She couldn't even begin to count the number of windows gleaming under the golden setting sun. A uniformed butler greeted her at the grand entrance, where marble pillars seemed to touch the heavens. And then came the oops moment. A gust of wind, perfectly timed, decided to toy with Emma's modest sundress as she stepped out of the car. She hastily pushed it back down, her cheeks blazing hotter than the Dubai sun. The chauffeur cleared his throat, clearly struggling to maintain his professional demeanor. Welcome to Day 1. Embarrassing Entrance 101. Emma was led through the massive foyer where chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, casting sparkling reflections on the polished floor. "Wow," she whispered under her breath, trying to remember how to act like a professional nanny instead of a wide-eyed tourist who just won the lottery. But the real showstopper, Amir al-Rashid himself. When Emma finally met the man of the house, she understood why the job came with an elite paycheck. Standing tall in his traditional kandora, Amir was, well, let's just say the temperature in the room wasn't the only thing making Emma feel warm. With a sharp jawline, piercing brown eyes, and an air of authority that could silence a crowded room, Amir looked like he had just walked off the cover of Arab Tycoon Weekly. He greeted her with a nod, his voice deep and composed. "Miss Clark, welcome. I hope you find everything to your satisfaction." Emma, who was absolutely not prepared for this level of presence, managed to squeak out a reply. Yes, everything's, very shiny. I mean, nice." "Way to go, Emma," she thought, mentally face-palming. Then came the real heart of the house, Amir's children. 7-year-old Layla and 5-year-old Karim peeked out from behind a massive golden door, their faces full of cautious curiosity. Layla clung to a stuffed camel that had clearly seen better days, while Karim clutched a tiny soccer ball like his life depended on it. Emma crouched down to their level, smiling warmly. "Hi there, I'm Emma. I'll be staying with you for a while." Layla blinked at her and whispered to Karim, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Do you think she's here to replace all the boring nannies?" Karim, apparently the braver of the two, stepped forward and asked bluntly, "Can you play soccer?" Emma grinned. "I can try, but be warned, I might be terrible." That earned a giggle from Layla and a raised eyebrow from Amir, who was silently observing. His expression softened ever so slightly, though he said nothing. Over the next few days, Emma settled into a routine, though calling it routine felt like an insult to the grandeur of her surroundings. Her mornings started with the aroma of freshly baked kubz bread wafting through the air as the household staff bustled about. She made it a point to connect with the children, not as a strict nanny, but as a friend. Layla, who had a flair for drama, quickly latched on to Emma, enlisting her for impromptu, theatrical performances. And Karim? Oh, he had found himself a rival on the soccer field, or rather, the lush, sprawling garden that could have easily hosted an entire World Cup. One afternoon, as they played, Emma accidentally kicked the ball straight into a delicate vase. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the halls, and for a second all three froze. Layla's eyes went wide as she whispered, "You're so gonna get fired." Emma chuckled nervously. "If I do, at least I'll go out with flair." To her surprise, it was Amir who appeared at the doorway, arms crossed, but lips twitching into the faintest of smiles. "Perhaps we should stick to outdoor sports," he said. Emma apologized profusely, but Amir only shrugged. It was an ugly vase anyway. Was that a joke? She wasn't sure, but his faint smirk lingered in her mind for the rest of the day. However, not everyone in the household was thrilled about Emma's presence. One afternoon, while exploring the library, she overheard whispers from Amir's distant relatives. "A foreigner, looking after the children? What will people say?" Emma's stomach knotted. She knew she was an outsider here, navigating uncharted waters. Still, she resolved not to let the negativity faze her. After all, she wasn't here to impress everyone, just to do her job and maybe, just maybe, prove she belonged. That evening, as she stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Emma found herself thinking about how far she had come, from struggling in London to standing in the heart of luxury. "Well," she muttered to herself, "if this is a mistake, it's the most beautiful mistake I've ever made." And deep down, she couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something far greater than she had ever imagined. Life at the Al Rashid estate was nothing like Emma had ever experienced before. Days turned into weeks, and as she got to know the family better, she realized this wasn't just a job. It was the start of a story she couldn't have written herself. Layla and Karim? Oh, those two had her heart wrapped tighter than the ribbons on Layla's favorite doll. Layla quickly started treating Emma like the older sister she always wanted. Every evening turned into a mix of tea parties, extravagant dress-up sessions, and dramatic tales involving princes and camels. Emma had no idea where this 7-year-old got such vivid imagination, but hey, who was she to kill the vibe? Karim, on the other hand, was the no-nonsense type, except when it came to soccer. He was determined to turn Emma into a professional player. Was it because he needed a partner, or just someone he could accidentally score goals against? Only Karim knew, but watching Emma slip and trip around the field while trying her best not to step on garden flowers became his new favorite hobby. One day, after Karim managed to land the ball square on Emma's shin, she winced dramatically and fell over as though she'd been tackled in the World Cup final. Karim froze, his eyes wide with terror. But Emma peeked out from behind her hand and whispered, "Your dad will totally ground you for life." Karim blinked. "What?" Emma shrugged casually. "I mean, if he's super strict today, who knows? Better help me up quick." As Karim scrambled to pull her up, Emma burst into laughter. "Gotcha!" His glare was priceless, but even Karim couldn't suppress a giggle as he muttered, "You're not bad, Miss Emma, not bad." But as much fun as Emma had with the kids, her moments with Amir were, let's call them, complicated. Their initial exchanges felt more like polite business transactions, formal to the point, and laced with an undertone of don't overstep. Yet over time, their interactions started to shift, like tiny cracks in an ice wall, beginning to let the warmth seep through. It was during a family dinner one evening that Emma noticed something different about Amir. As Karim told an animated story about Emma's soccer skills, complete with reenactments of her flailing arms, Amir's usually stern expression softened. A small smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he glanced at Emma. "Sounds like you've been giving my children quite the entertainment," he said, his tone lighter than usual. Emma grinned. "I aim to please Mr. Al-Rashid, even if that means risking public humiliation." The faintest chuckle escaped Amir's lips. A chuckle? Emma nearly dropped her glass. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Things weren't exactly smooth sailing. Emma couldn't ignore the tension between her and Amir's staff or extended family. Many of them watched her like hawks, waiting for the slightest misstep. One of the senior maids, Amira, even cornered her in the hallway one morning, whispering sharply, "You're just a visitor here. Don't forget your place." Emma smiled politely. "Thank you for the reminder. I'll be sure to stay where I belong, happily playing soccer in the garden." And then, with a perfectly innocent smile, she walked away, leaving Amira staring in stunned silence. The real breakthrough came one quiet night. The house had fallen silent, and Emma was sitting in the library, a book in hand, when Amir walked in. She jumped slightly, feeling like she'd been caught sneaking cookies from the kitchen. "I didn't mean to disturb you," he said, his voice soft but commanding. He walked over to the bookshelf, scanning the titles. "It's rare to find someone here who appreciates old books." Emma set her book down, curiosity getting the better of her. "What's your favorite?" she asked. Amir pulled out a leather-bound volume, his fingers brushing the worn edges. "This one. My father gave it to me when I was young. It taught me the value of patience." Emma smirked. "So does it help? With patience, I mean." For the first time, she saw Amir's guarded expression crack into something real, a mix of amusement and vulnerability. "Not as much as I'd like," he admitted. For a moment, their eyes met, and Emma felt something unfamiliar flutter in her chest. Over the next few weeks, those moments became more frequent. A chance meeting in the garden, a shared laugh during dinner, or a casual exchange about the children. Each time, the walls around Amir seemed to lower, brick by brick. But of course, the sparks didn't go unnoticed. During an afternoon tea gathering with Amir's relatives, one of the older women fixed Emma with a sharp gaze and said, "You must be very talented to earn the children's affection so quickly." The words dripped with hidden meaning, and Emma could practically feel the daggers in her tone. Emma smiled brightly and replied, "Children are easier to impress. Adults. Now that's a real challenge." Her eyes flicked briefly to Amir, who stifled a laugh behind his teacup. And just like that, the lines between professional and personal started to blur. The children adored Emma. Amir seemed less distant, and even some of the staff began warming up to her charm. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a tightrope, one wrong step away from everything crumbling. Little did she know the storm brewing in the shadows would soon test all their bonds in ways none of them could have imagined. Things were going too smoothly, weren't they? And when life seems perfect, you know drama is right around the corner. For a while, everything seemed to be falling into place. The children were happy, Amir was smiling more often, and Emma started to believe that maybe, just maybe, this fairy tale job could have a happy ending. But life, as always, had other plans. It started with Karim, who had been unusually quiet all morning. Normally he'd be running circles around the garden, ball in hand, but today he stayed curled up on the couch, his little face pale and drawn. Emma knew something wasn't right. "Karim," she asked, kneeling beside him, "what's wrong, buddy?" His tiny voice trembled as he whispered, "My stomach hurts." What began as a mild concern turned into a full-blown crisis within hours. Karim's fever spiked, and he became lethargic. Emma immediately alerted Amir, who wasted no time rushing home from his office. A doctor was called, and soon the mansion was a flurry of worried activity. Amid the chaos, Emma stayed by Karim's side, soothing him with stories and cool compresses. But the whispers among the staff didn't escape her ears. "She's out of her depth," one muttered. "What if something happens to the boy while she's in charge?" For the first time, Emma felt the weight of expectations crushing her. But then, as she glanced at Karim's little hand clutching hers, she knew she couldn't afford to falter. When the doctor finally arrived, he praised Emma's quick thinking. "If you hadn't acted so quickly to bring his fever down, things could have been much worse," he said. Amir, who had been silent in the corner, looked at Emma with something that went beyond gratitude. It was respect. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You've done more than anyone could have expected." Just when Emma thought things might settle, the storm moved to a different front. Word of her growing closeness to Amir and the children began to spread. Whispers reached the wider Al-Rashid family and, eventually, the tabloids. "Western Nanny turned lady of the house," screamed one headline. Another snidely asked, "Does the Al-Rashid family have a scandal in the making?" Emma was furious, but Amir's reaction surprised her. Instead of shying away, he became more openly protective. "Let them talk," he said. "What matters is what we know to be true." The words were meant to be reassuring, but Emma couldn't help wondering, what exactly was true anymore? It happened on a warm evening under a sky full of stars. Emma had put the children to bed and was heading back to her room when she found Amir waiting in the garden. He stood there, his kandora billowing gently in the desert breeze, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "Emma," he began, his voice low, "I need to speak with you." She hesitated. His tone was serious, and her heart raced. Was this it? Was he about to tell her that the family drama had become too much, that she needed to leave? "You've become important to us," he said, stepping closer. "To the children, to me." Emma blinked, unsure if she'd heard him correctly. "Amir, I'm just doing my job." He shook his head, a a small smile tugging at his lips. "You've done much more than that. You've brought joy back into this house. You've shown me what it means to feel alive again." Her breath caught as he reached for her hand. "Emma, this is not just about gratitude. It's about a future. Ours together. Will you stay? As more than the children's nanny, as my wife?" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Emma felt every ounce of her old life flash before her, the struggles, the doubts, the longing for something more. And here it was, standing in front of her, dressed in white and gold, and offering her a dream she never even dared to imagine. "Amir, this is so unexpected," she stammered. "Are you sure about this? About us?" Amir's gaze was steady. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Emma's lips parted as a soft laugh escaped her. "Well, when you put it like that, how can I say no?" And just like that, the shy nanny from London became the wife of an Arab tycoon. But this wasn't the end of their story. Oh no, it was only the beginning of a life filled with love, challenges, and adventures they would face together. Becoming the wife of an Arab tycoon was like stepping into another world for Emma. Overnight, she went from being a quiet nanny to being addressed as Mrs. Al-Rashid. Lavish parties, grand dinners, and the constant eyes of high society became her new norm. But life as the lady of the house was far from a fairy tale. While Amir was every bit the loving and supportive husband, the weight of expectations was immense. People who once dismissed her now scrutinized her every move, every outfit, every word she spoke, even her choice of jewelry became topics of endless gossip. One day, during a charity event at the Al-Rashid estate, a sharp-tongued socialite approached Emma. "Tell me, Mrs. Al-Rashid, how does a girl with no pedigree handle a position like this? It must be overwhelming for you." Emma didn't miss a beat. Flashing her brightest smile, she replied, "You're right, it's overwhelming, just like trying to keep up with your fashion choices. So daring." The woman's face turned a shade of red that perfectly matched her lipstick, and Emma walked away with her head held high. With every passing day, Emma proved that she wasn't just a decoration in Amir's life. She took an active role in the household and the business, learning the ins and outs of the family's extensive empire. She introduced changes to the staff's working conditions, advocated for local women's education initiatives, and perhaps most importantly, built a bridge between the family and the public that had always seemed out of reach. Her bond with Layla and Karim only deepened. Karim, now brimming with confidence, boasted to his friends at school that his new mom was basically a superhero. Layla would tell anyone who listened about the magical bedtime stories Emma created just for her. But amidst these heartwarming moments, there were whispers in the background, lingering doubts and jealousy that threatened to disrupt their hard-won happiness. Every great story needs a villain, and Emma's new life was no exception. In her case, the challenge came in the form of Khaled, Emir's ambitious cousin, who had always wanted control over the Al-Rashid empire. Khaled didn't hide his disdain for Emma, constantly questioning her decisions and her place in the family. During a heated family board meeting, Khaled smirked as he leaned back in his chair. "Emma, with all due respect, do you really think you're qualified to offer input on matters of business? Or is this just another one of your bedtime stories?" The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to Emma. She could feel the heat of their stares, but she refused to flinch. Smiling calmly, she replied, "You're right, Khaled. I don't have a business degree. But what I do have is perspective. Something this board clearly needs. Perhaps if you'd spent more time with the workers and less in the boardroom, you'd understand the importance of today's proposal." Her words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Khalid opened his mouth to retort, but Amir spoke up before he could. "Emma's right," Amir said, his voice steady. "Her insights have already saved us time and resources. I trust her judgment completely." Khalid's glare could have melted ice, but Emma's confidence didn't waver. That day, she had made it clear. She wasn't just a new wife or a former nanny, she was a force to be reckoned with. But even as Emma stood tall, the road ahead wasn't without twists and turns. Every triumph brought new trials, but with Amir by her side and her growing confidence, she learned to weather every storm. Because Emma wasn't just proving herself to others, she was proving something even more important, to herself. And in doing so, she showed everyone that love, resilience, and a little bit of fire could take an ordinary girl from London and make her the heart of one of the most powerful families in the Middle East.